Hello, and welcome to my Sunday thought. It is now fall in London. It has we're done with summer, and dogs. People are taking out their dogs, and I have some favorite dogs in the neighborhood. When I first moved in here, there were no animals that I could see, but now the neighborhood is changing. Not a lot, but it's changing, and I'm seeing more people walking dogs. There's a beagle named Lucy that has become my good friend, and there are several others whose names I can't remember, but they're absolutely adorable. One of the things that I like to talk about is how people anthropomorphize their pets. They do. They anthropomorphize them. And if you don't know what that means that they make them into human beings. And you take my friend Rob Mayhew. Now, Rob Mayhew has a cat named George Michael. It's an absolutely lovely cat, and Rob is upset because he is sure that the cat is gay. And I said, why are you upset? He said, well, he might get AIDS. I said, no, he's not going to get AIDS. He said, well, he might. And besides, I don't like his boyfriend. So I said, well, what's wrong with his boyfriend? He said, well, he's really macho, the boyfriend, and he's teaching George Michael bad habits. Because George Michael brings rats into the house, he brings butterflies into the house, and it's all because he's under bad influences, because my cat is gay. So but now, the latest problem with George Michael is he stopped eating. So I said, so what did you do? He said, well, we took him to the vet. And it turns out that he has IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, because he's very nervous, and he's tense, and he has a lot of anxiety. And I said to him, that is absolutely ridiculous. I had a cat. His name is Michael, not George Michael. And he stopped eating. And when he stopped eating, I just let him wait. I figured if he waits long enough, he's going to eat. And sure enough, after a week, Michael started eating again. Now, George Michael has some medication to calm his nerves, and I haven't checked up to see if he's started eating or not. But Rob is not the only one that anthropomorphizes his pets. I'm reminded of my wonderful Irish friends who got two miniature schnauzers. Two miniature hamsters. Miniature, that means they were this big. If you don't know what hamsters are, they're little fluffy rats, is what they are. And they got two, and they named them Chicken and Noodle. And that was when I met them. And I met Chicken and Noodle. However, Noodle was not long for this world because Noodle started acting funny, and Lisa, the mommy, took Noodle to the vet. They paid maybe 20 euros for these two miniature hamsters. The vet was another 50 euros, and the vet examined Noodle, who was feeling lousy, according to Lisa, and said that no, that she has a tumor. Noodle has a tumor, but she's so tiny that we can't anesthetize her, so we can't take it out. And so they took Noodle home, and Noodle died, and Chicken was distraught. She was so lonely, missed her little buddy, and she paced the cage. She didn't drink any water. She was absolutely miserable. And then I said to Lisa, what you should do is get the Chicken a dumpling, a little hamster named Dumpling, and that will solve the problem. But Lisa didn't listen. And what Lisa did is she got a Jack Russell named Fuji. And the Jack Russell, who's an absolutely lovely little dog, ignored Chicken completely. And the family was completely taken up with this beautiful little Jack Russell. And so they moved Chicken from the living room, where all the action was, up into the guest room where no one was there. And Chicken died of loneliness. Fuji is still fine. But I'm reminded also of my friend Wanda, because I used to feed my animals dog food. My dog food and my cat's cat food. That's what I did. And if my dogs got sick, then they got baby food, chicken, and rice. And any of you who have animals, that is exactly what I did. I never took my animals to the vet. and my animals lived to be 16, 17, and 18 years old. And I had one cat that I swear lived to be 25. I know she was at least 25. So they live a long time, and I do not take them to the vet. However, my friend Wanda had a poodle, and I don't remember this poodle's name, but I used to babysit it. It was a sweet, quiet little poodle. But she always brought over this poodle's food, and this poodle got special uh, turkey that Wanda bought and roasted for her and then shredded so that the poodle would have a delicious meal. And I said, dogs, they don't care delicious or not delicious. When they're hungry, they just eat. Um, but when I think about, and so that's Wanda with the poodle. But when I think about anthropomorphizing animals, I think the classic is our animal that we had when I was growing up, who was a wire-haired terrier named Junior, and he was disgusting. And Junior, my sister insists that the dog was not disgusting, and I think that's because she wasn't paying any attention. But I was. My mother adored this dog, absolutely adored this dog. And it was my father who decided to get the dog because he thought that the dog, if they gave him a little plaid jacket, he would look really good on the golf course when my father went to the golf course. However, the dog did not like men. It simply did not like men. And my mother fell in love with the dog immediately. His name was Junior, and she fell in love with the dog, and the dog fell in love with my mother. And I like to think it's because they both had the same temperament. Junior barked all the time, and my mother screamed all the time. So they got along. They understood each other, and my mother insisted on having Junior. Junior never had a dog bed, God forbid. Junior slept in bed with my mother and my father. However, the dog hated men. So my father couldn't get into the bedroom after they got him for at least 3 months. And I have never seen my father try to win over any human being the way he tried to win over that dog, because he was stuck sleeping on the couch downstairs. So he finally did, and he managed to get into the bedroom as long as he stayed in his bed and not over my mother's, which of course means that I never had, after my sister, there were no more children. There were no more children because of this dog. And my mother insisted that the dog had feelings, and she was absolutely sure. And the dog was vicious. And one day, my aunt Sunny brought her grandchild over. And the grandchild's name was her grandchild was Kathy, but they brought, that's right, it was Kathy. And they brought Kathy over, and little teeny girl, the cutest little girl, and Junior bit her. And the idea is that what you do then is you take your dog and you put him out so that he stops attacking children. But my mother didn't do that. My mother came in and she said to my Aunt Sunny, so what did that little girl do to the dog? Which the little girl didn't do anything but breathe. But the best story of Junior is a story that's really out of season right now. But if you know anything about the Jewish Passover, it's a very huge, huge holiday. It's a very huge holiday. And the Jews, among other rituals, put out a glass of wine to encourage the prophet Elijah to come by and have a drink. And on this particular Passover, and I believe that's the one where Kathy was there, on this particular Passover, we put out the wine, and the dog drank it. And the dog was so drunk, he was batting against the wall, he was flying against people, he was so drunk. But my mother thought that it was Elijah, and my mother was absolutely thrilled. She said, all these years, we've had these Passover seders and dinners, and finally, Elijah has come. And of course, Elijah didn't come, it was the dog. But the piece de la resistance was when my father finally got the dog to tolerate him and took him out to the golf course. And the dog ran away. And my mother was absolutely, she was torn apart. And she said to my father, he didn't have anything to eat. And my father said, yes, I gave him a hamburger. And my mother said, but he doesn't eat that kind of meat. He only eats ground round. Anyway, every day for the next 2 weeks, my father had to go to the Humane Society and look at all the dead animals they brought in to see if one of them was Junior. And of course, I was hoping one of them was, but my mother was hoping not. And finally, my mother got a call. I do not know how these people managed to get to Junior's collar, which of course had every bit of information on it. But Junior was so vicious that I think they must have knocked him out. But they finally got to his collar, and they called my mother. And he was in a farm just outside of near the country club. My father took him to an exclusive country club, of course, out. I think it was Holland, Ohio. I think was the name of it. And he was out there. And my father came and brought the dog home, and my mother was distraught. She said, he was filthy. They didn't even bathe him. And of course, it would have been worth their lives to bathe him. But to my mother, that dog was human. And when Junior finally died, which was a blessing to the human race, when he finally died, my mother put up a shrine in the garage. And every day when she would drive her Cadillac into the garage, she would get out of the Cadillac and she would go and she would stand and remember Junior at his shrine, which I think is the ultimate ridiculousness. Because for me, my animals were animals. Sadly, I never dressed them in fancy clothes. If they didn't eat, they starved. I took them to the vet when they had terrible things wrong with them, but never for indigestion. I'm sure all my dogs had irritable bowel syndrome because living with me must not have been easy. But they were animals, and they lived like animals. And all of them, as I say, lived for a long, long time. So if you ever need any advice on how to take care of your animal, you can send me an email. I assure you it won't cost you a cent, and I promise you that your animals will live long, healthy lives. And thank you so much for joining me for my crazy thoughts on my crazy thoughts on this new fall Sunday in London.